Hello and welcome again. Today we're discussing events which took place on October the 1st, 2025 in various suburbs and locations in and surrounding Perth, Western Australia. On that afternoon at approximately 2:30 p.m, I was alerted by my faithful dog to the presence of persons outside my home. When I looked outside, there were 3 unmarked police vehicles on my lawn and driveway, with I think 6 heavily armed officers, not in the normal uniforms worn by constables in Western Australia, demanding that I answer my front door. When I went to the door, an officer there told me that I had to open it and admit them, as they were in the process of confiscating my firearm. The officer brandished a letter from a bureaucrat in the police licensing division, which alleged that in his opinion, I was not a fit and proper person to possess a firearm. Without giving me time to cast any more than a cursory glance at this document, which turns out to be both defamatory and libelous, the officer, when I asked whether they had a warrant to enter my premises, asserted, falsely as it turns out, that none was needed. The reason he gave for this mendacious statement was that because there was a firearm involved, there was danger present, and that gave these uniformed goons the right to overturn the lawful procedures of the Constitution and do as they pleased. When I again stated that a warrant was needed, I was told, quote, "If you don't open the door, we're going to smash it in with our battering rams and come in anyway," end quote. In the face of such an open and blatant threat of physical violence, and fearing that if I resisted any further, they might well visit violence upon my person as well as my property, I admitted them. Whereupon they demanded that I open my gun safe and allow the senior officer present to extract my firearm from it. He then demanded the ammunition, to which I replied that I didn't have any. My gun was only purchased to enable me to hunt for food, should that become necessary in the event of financial or social dislocation or unrest, given the unstable state of the global financial system, coupled with the endemic geopolitical tensions which currently exist. As I hadn't as yet planned any hunting trips, I had no ammunition, and asked the officers what danger they thought they were in from me. Perhaps they imagined that I was about to burst forth from my home and attempt to gun the 6 of them down, then make my escape on foot into the surrounding suburban streets in the manner of the allegedly elusive Desi Freeman, erstwhile of Victoria. That would be some trick, since I'm approaching my 79th birthday, and it's been some years since I've even broken into a run under any circumstances. With the information at their disposal concerning my age, one might have expected armed police to have deduced that any such fears would only have arisen from paranoia, not an assessment of reality. But then, as the senior officer himself pointed out during the proceedings, they're not paid to think, just as well as it would be yet more wasted money. When the senior officer, in a pathetic attempt to excuse the squad from any accountability for their actions, claimed that they were just messengers, I stated that no, they were acting unlawfully and were in fact committing armed robbery with aggravated threats of violence, very serious criminal offences. My pet dog, bless him, had been barking continuously during the first few minutes of this criminal invasion, seriously disrupting the attempted conversation, for want of a better word, and the CO asked if I could quieten him down. I did so, noting that my dog, apparently had a better understanding of the inappropriateness of proceedings than did these attack dogs of the political masters they so cravenly serve. After completing the relevant paperwork of providing a receipt for my stolen property, I asked them to leave as quickly as possible, as the 2 female housemates' return from the shops was imminent, and I'd appreciate it if they would avoid upsetting every member of the household. They then left after telling me that there were a number of such crimes, my word, not theirs, being inflicted upon various members of the community that same afternoon, a fact which was indeed confirmed in the media during the following days. That's what happened, so what of the implications? It turns out that the letter authorising this lawlessness from the bureaucrat involved made defamatory and libellous statements about me, and I presume others also subjected to this criminality. The main points were that I was an unfit person because I had espoused sovereign citizen ideologies, and also that I was an associate of 3 other alleged sovereign citizen individuals, whom he named, but none of whom are known to me. Naturally, none of these terms were defined, and not a skerrick of evidence was presented for any of these claims. It transpires that under the Firearms Act 2024 of Western Australia, no action should have been taken before I was informed in writing of these suspicions and being given a chance to request, review, and rebut any evidence presented, up to and including having the matter heard before the State Administrative Tribunal and pending their approval of any such action. Clearly, all of the officers involved have simply trumped up the sovereign citizen oxymoron and made ridiculous claims about non-existent threats to the safety of so-called government officials. One of the other victims of this dangerous and ludicrous buffoonery was a man in his 80s or 90s. It's quite clear that the criminals pretending to operate under legal authority, they can't and don't even claim to be representing the Crown anymore, have decided that anyone who opposes even verbally the usurpation of power of the corporate gangs now running roughshod over the law in this country constitutes an unacceptable risk to their security and must be disarmed. They're correct in their assessment of the risk, for they are committing crimes which warrant life prison terms or even capital punishment for sedition and treason. Such decisions, of course, are the proper province of juries in lawful courts of record, lest anyone viewing this seeks to impute to me statements calling for extreme penalties. I stress that I'm personally opposed to death penalties for obvious moral reasons, and since I claim that the law and its administration must be morally accountable, let there be no misunderstanding on this point. A point which needs clarification is the fact that I have over 100 videos publicly available which urge everybody to observe the law, obviously makes a laughingstock of the relevant bureaucrat's claim of my sovereign citizen ideological bent. No doubt his masters are upset because I include the police, the judiciary, and the politicians in my urgings of lawfulness upon the community, very inconveniently for them. Another is that in my letter to this bureaucrat, I listed the unlawful actions to which I've referred here, together with that of breach of fiduciary duty in his role of protecting my person and property from misappropriation or abuse in his position of trust, and the exercise of malfeasance in public office. I gave him the opportunity to respond to these claims with a warning that legal action was probably inevitable if he did not do so, and all this was sent to him by registered post. He has not responded, and there is evidence that he refused to even receive my correspondence, constituting a further breach of honourable behaviour in his office. This issue is currently being pursued further. The main issue here is, however, the question of whether a society is governed by the rule of law or the rule of naked force. Dupes like Robert Sudi and apparatchiks such as retired magistrate David Heilpern, black belt barrister Daniel Shensmith, and constitutional advisor Professor Anne Toomey all claim falsely that the English Constitution, as defined in Magna Carta 1215, has been redefined by statute law and effectively repealed or annulled, being replaced by the agglomeration of statute and case law over the centuries. Their cardinal error in making such claims is in using the word law to describe the system which has now all but buried the constitutional law of Magna Carta 1215. Parliament has no authority whatsoever to enact any legislation which breaches that treaty between the monarch, representing the Crown, and the people, who are expressly instructed to be protected by the peers of the monarch, the barons. Simply passing legislation which endorses some chapters or articles of Magna Carta 1215 while omitting clauses which the Parliament wishes weren't there in no way invalidates, repeals or negates those sections overlooked. To claim so is to engage in deliberate sophistry and deception. Those, like the characters just mentioned, commit sedition in denying the validity of the Constitution and treason in upholding any persons or parties which deliberately suborn the rule of law and act in such ways as to replace it with a web of legislation permitting administrators of state to act by the initiation of violence against anyone who has not been tried by a jury and found guilty of causing harm or loss to any others. The irony of these supporters of such usurpations is that the very statutes, including the 1297 Act they cite in their false claims, actually still contain the relevant clauses of MC 1215 which invalidate their actions, namely Articles 39 and 40, which state unequivocally that the state will not act against anyone without a prior conviction of a jury of one's peers, nor will it delay or charge money for the application of justice to any crowned subject. Of course, anyone claiming such rights and expecting any of the current corporate courts to uphold them will be fobbed off with evasive arguments about those things not applying in the present situation, a blatant betrayal of inalienable rights and a prima facie case of treason by those who have sworn an oath of office to protect such rights. If any of the other victims of this criminal lawlessness of that day, October the 1st, are interested in a possible class action against these miscreants, they may contact me via the comments box or the email address displayed during this video. It's high time that such instances of blatant disregard for the law and even their own legislation are publicised and called to account. The fact that alleged public servants of this ilk are seen to be hiding even from notifications of their own regulatory infractions makes it likely they will be very reluctant to have these kinds of issues raised in a civil court. Some of those officers who invaded my home probably think that they're good and efficient carriers out of orders and are somehow serving the community. The fact is, they are not only obscene caricatures of constables, but they are also not even fit for purpose as human beings. For what type of persons are they who openly inflict harm on innocent people and do it for filthy lucre? Is there a lower type of person than this who daily violates their oath of office, even extending their malfeasance to the protection of those who commit such hideous crimes as paedophilia and treason? These are dark times, and I urge anyone who can to speak up now while you still may. Thank you for watching.